I had taken the journey of a bar and restaurateur, which probably includes a lot of extracurricular activities that don't pertain to business. So I was kind of starting again at the bottom in my early 30s. And there were some folks who were going to get an arcade going in Boise, and they put a Craigslist ad out, and it said, "We don't know what we're doing. We just are wanting to get an arcade bar going. We want to flip you the keys, and you can drive this thing." So, being early 30s, like hungry, like wanting to prove myself as someone who, wasn't who I was previously, I took on the challenge. I went in and told them I was going to be their bar manager. And really, I mean, I do love arcades. I love gaming and all that. But my expertise is behind the bar and and hosting a party. That's what I do. And so I just knew that we could tie those things into how I worked. So I started managing the bar for them, and we started to see growth. And about 5 years in, I met Zach, and Zach was like, "Hey, let's try and take this thing over," because they weren't doing anything with it. The previous owners, they were just kind of passive owners, and they didn't really have any sort of interest in it other than a hobby. And we knew we could turn it on its ear. So Zach came to me, said, let's buy it from these guys. And I approached him and said, "Sell it to us, or I'm walking, and then there won't be a Spacebar." And so I think that ultimatum kind of put them in a position where they were like, "Well, we want to see this thing continue, and you're the right people to run it for us." So enter Zach, and it's been a rocket ship to the moon since, because this guy, he knows a lot about all those games, is passionate about all those games, speaks way more nerd than me, and we would not be where we are or where we're going without him and his vision with it too. So that's my half until where we get here.
Thank you, Will. I wasn't prepared to wax eloquently about you, but
love you, buddy.
I don't want to waste anyone's time with my numerous love notes to you that I could write. I'm thankful for Will and his dedication to the craft, and because it's an arcade bar, it's not just an arcade, and he is very knowledgeable about those things, running a bar and running a business, and there's many other things that go into that as far as the music that we offer and that he curates, and the film and the artwork and everything that goes along with that. That's people are nerdy about. That is kind of back in the day, it was just like pop music being played in arcades, and then now when people go to an arcade, they expect like 80s pop music to be played, but there's a lot more music out there than just 80s pop music. And I think that some people come in looking for that, and then we play some, but but Will curates this thing. What's that? It's just a small part of what we do, because there's a lot more music out there, and there's a lot of people who are music nerds, and Will is a music nerd, and he can speak that type of nerd to those people. And I don't know anything about music. My music tastes haven't changed in like 10 years since I went to college, and it's just in this like time capsule. And but he helps me learn new things, and he introduces me to new bands all the time. But that's kind of Spacebar in a nutshell. We can field some questions for people, from people as we go, if you want to know more about what we do, or you can check us out over on just a couple blocks from here. But we want to get into the meat and the potatoes of this talk and what is the future of the arcade. I'll kind of kick it off by, everybody knows the birth and the genesis of arcades and how they kind of were popularized in the late 70s and early 80s with the rise of video games and arcades and this nature. And they've been doing that with pinball and kind of other types of arcades in the past. But video game arcades really took off in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was like this boom time with Atari and Bally Midway and all those guys doing stuff, and Gottlieb and everything. So it was like this real big boom, and then things kind of tapered off as home consoles gained some momentum, and things as such. Everybody knows the story, but now where are we and where are we going? I think that a lot of people or a lot of places, have this research, the big boom of like arcade bars, and where people are nostalgic for things that were from their youth, like us and some people who are older than us, and there's like this boom of that. And that, are we riding that wave, or is it the new version of that as things kind of evolve? And that's, maybe yet to be determined. We're still writing the book on that, because I think there's a lot of younger people who come into the bar or arcade. Younger by 21, they're just introduced to this, but they're not native to Pac-Man. They don't know what any of this stuff is. There are a lot of consoles they're not native to that we have. We have a Switch, but they're not native. They're not native to the other stuff. So they're like, how do you put the thing in the Nintendo?
Just last night, I watched you help someone start a pinball machine. They drop a coin in and they don't know how to start the machine.
Shouldn't it just go? And one of our newer employees who is younger, she's like, I think the Super Nintendo is broken. And I said, what? She just like put the game in the top, and I was like there, and she was like, it's not working. I turned it on, nothing, and I put the game in, it doesn't work. I'm like, it's more like a clunk. It's a clunk, and she's like, oh, and I was like, yeah, you blow on it. But so that's the evolution. But where do we personally see the evolution of arcades? We like to preserve the past, because I have we have a story about the what Spacebar is and where it exists in time, and how because you can put a whole bunch of vintage games in a room and you say it's an arcade bar, but there's got to be a narrative to that, and we have a narrative, and my version of it is that, I'll make it short, is that during the 80s, the Cold War happened, and we had a nuclear fallout, and they sent this arc out, right? And they took all this popular stuff and they sent it out like, oh, everyone on Earth is going to die, so let's send all this stuff out. And they sent this arc out with all these people on it, and they were like this time capsule from the 80s, and they brought, arcade games, they brought music, they brought all these things, and they made it all the way to the Kepler 22b, which is the closest habitable planet that NASA thinks that we could inhabit. That's like a terraformed, inhabitable zone of this closest star to us that they're able to think that, hey, that human life might exist on. So they made it as far as Kepler 22b, and they kind of started orbiting, and they started meeting up with other alien races, and they started mixing Earth pop culture from the 80s with other alien stuff. And that's kind of where I vision Spacebar being like, yeah, there's some cool stuff from the 80s, and there's these video games and this music and stuff that exists, but there's also that stuff that exists beyond that, with other alien races and other things that we've cooked up along the way. So we're a time capsule as such, but we're also open to new things. And that's where the future of the arcade exists, as far as one of the things we like to push on is independent gaming. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, too, is to kind of like show support for that, foster it. Or if anybody here is a software developer and wants to try their hand at having their game in an arcade, we would be more than happy to have another independent game in the arcade. We have a few, and we've had some in the past, and we would love to have more. And I think that's one of the ways that the arcade can exist, is that through independent gaming. And I know that a lot of games you can just, they're easily consumable on your phone, your Switch, your PC, or whatever, but there's something to be said about consuming a product with other people in a bar, like doing stuff like that. So independent gaming is big, and we're going to really foster that going forward. Right now we have Devout Tournament, which is a local guys that out of Boise State who developed that. Burdock Games, it's like a party fighting game. We have Switch and Shoot, was a mobile game that a guy reverse ported back to an arcade cabinet, and he was a small startup from Iowa? Des Moines. Yep. And he made Switch and Shoot and kind of shopped it out to the different arcade bars in the U.S., and he got some traction with that. And I don't know if he wants us to say this, but he is now reverse porting. I'm sure you've heard of Nidhogg. So there's Nidhogg 2 is out there, and he's reverse porting Nidhogg 2, and we're once he releases that, he's having the games made by another company. We're going to put Nidhogg 2 on the floor, which is like it's a fighting game, dueling game. It's super fun. But what else you see in the future?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, in addition to everything you're saying, which is the vision, I think that in Boise we are fortunate to be and unfortunate to be the only game in town. So we can kind of write the narrative how we want with our arcade bar, but we don't necessarily just want to write the narrative as we see it. We want input from our community too. We want people to be involved in what we're doing and see the vision, like Zach was saying, and getting on board the spaceship and wanting to be part of the crew and basically doing what you see people at Olive Tree for doing, putting their efforts into our community effort, because we see this as a thing for our community. It's not just a business for Zach and I to provide for our families. It's for the enrichment of our community, and we want to involve everyone in that. So.
Oh, absolutely. That being said, there's more than just for us. This is all, take this with a grain of salt. This is like our vision of the future of the arcade. It's not the only thing that that can happen. It's it's just our interpretation of it. Something that I'm passionate about is like electronic art and things like that, where you bring hardware and software together in a visual way. We have a couple of different Easter eggs. You all know what Easter eggs are. We have a couple of different Easter eggs in the bar where we've kind of mashed up some Arduino-based stuff, some gaming stuff, and some light LED stuff. So I don't want to give it away because you got to go check it out. It's super fun. But that's another part of it where we mash up art and culture and pop stuff, and we make it into like interactive artwork that you can then touch and interact with in various ways. And I think that's a way that you can involve technology, which I'm super passionate about, pop culture, vintage things, and things that are new that, Arduino didn't exist in 1980s. That's something very new. It's this like small-based development computer or, controller that anybody can, it's like super cheap and anybody can do it. And it's super fun. So that's something that we see as far as the arcade. And there's a lot of more entertainment value. There's a place in Chicago called Logan's Hardware. It's Logan's Arcade. They took an old Showcase Pizza like show, and everybody is really about Showcase Pizza or Chuck E. Cheese, whatever side of the tracks you're from. Where do you think it's some stupid rat that came in and like ruined everything? So they have the rocket fire explosion. Was it a rocket fire explosion?
They have it's dogs. They've got
dogs,
animatronic dogs.
Some of it's like supposed to be part of it.
But they're dressed up like the Ramones.
Oh, I thought it was Rancid. Or no, was it Rancid or the Ramones?
The
Anywho,
Ramones.
I'm butchering the story, but Logan's Arcade has an old animatronic puppet show that's based off of the Showcase Pizza stuff or Chuck E. Cheese. But they have that, and it's like you're nostalgic for it, but it's like that. Wait, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's cool because I identify with that. But then they took it and they made it new. They hacked it and they made it new and fun and fresh. So that's part of stuff. There's a whole. We could just have a panel on pinball too, because there's a whole. Pinball is a big part of the arcade, and there's numerous pinball companies that are starting to pop up. Because the only survivor from the OG days was Stern, and they're the king right now. But you've got Spooky, you've got American Pinball, you've got Chicago Gaming, you got like probably half dozen new pinball players that are introducing new games for the arcade and for home use as well. So that's something we're dabbling in. I'm not going to divulge too much because we're trying to keep some of the secrets there as far as fun stuff goes. So we're dabbling in independently developed pinball and what that looks like. What else?
Follow us on Instagram because we actually have Easter eggs that we did, and we have free entry to Spacebar during Tree Fort if you don't have a pass, or money off of drinks. So on our Instagram story, we'll take pictures of where we've hidden those Easter eggs, and you can grab them and get something to come to Spacebar and get.
Yeah. Also part of the software, hardware stuff is VR and AR. We're not really big on the VR because, I mean, it's just kind of not, it doesn't fit in with what we do, but that's not saying we won't do it. We won't collaborate with somebody if they're really passionate and they want to do it. The guys who did the Devout tournament, the one guy, Aaron, he is really about VR, and he's passionate about that, and we're trying to work some of that stuff in, but and augmented reality as well. We've got an artist that we work with who's big into that, and then we also have a kind of a mashup too. Warren, what is Warren doing? Warren basically made a virtual space bar that you could check into and be there virtually, but then also physically if you're there, and then interact with somebody who's like at home who's checked into Spacebar, but then you're there checked into Spacebar, and you guys can interact and your avatars are there, and he kind of mapped it all out, and it was really rad the way he did it. It was because you could get this like third person view of the basement, and it was just like it looked like a catacomb level from the first Diablo, when you're like clicking around in there and you kind of see that thing and you could kind of see what's coming up, and it was really neat. So there's some stuff that's those kind of irons in the fire as far as that stuff too.
I don't know. Do you want to
yeah,
open
this
it up?
now. Yeah, we can like talk
Field
to people
questions if you have any, or we can keep talking.
We can talk all day about this stuff.
So, quick question on the kind of the growth and history of the arcade. Is there still a community that's maintaining the ROMs that went into the games? Is there still a community that's maintaining, like very much like the 2600 console or Activision console games or home games that were out there? Are there communities that are maintaining that, and do you see that as a continued source of growth opportunity for the arcade environment and for Spacebar in particular? Oh,
yeah, absolutely. That's funny you bring that up, because I just bought for Spacebar the FRPG or whatever. I bought an independently developed board that is now taking the ROMs, and it can actually now accurately portray that software in the way it was meant to be, in a digital way, where it used to have to be like you'd have. I mean, I don't. Going down the rabbit hole, so that you can accurately display those games in the way they're supposed to be, with a single board that you can then dial in the logic to where it mimics the old chips digitally now.
Yeah, the dip switches and so forth.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we just purchased one of those so that we can dink around with that, because there's a lot of people who are tweaking that. They're making new hardware and selling it as boutique and independently developed stuff. There's a resurgence with that, or we're trying to get games to work accurately, non-emulated on new hardware that does it in an accurate way, because there's people who are very religious or like really stringent about the way that the cycles per second or the frame rates and the scan lines and stuff like that. And there's a whole CRT, LCD, plasma debate, and I take care of that with saying, hey, well, in the orbiting Kepler 22b, we don't have access to to tubes,
right?
So we only have 3 games in the bar that don't have tubes, and tubes are the Achilles heel of the arcade right now, because they're not making them anymore. They're extremely difficult to work on, and and when they catch on fire, it's really hard to replace.
And that happened.
And when that happens,
Galaga just went up in flames.
R.I.P. Galaga's tube TV. And so when they catch on fire because they're really old, or no one has a TV from 40 years ago that they're using on a daily basis for 8+ hours, or a computer,
and being drunk and
spilling a beer on it,
and doing everything that they do.
So when people give us flack, it's like, do you know anybody who's using a computer that's 40 years old on a daily basis for 8 hours a day, and their TV, like all that stuff? It's really hard to keep these things alive and yeah.
And this is when we kind of cross with our passion for classic cars, and we have a 1972 El Camino that we restored, and we're talking about converting it to an EV, and kind of going that way with it because we love the idea of it being a classic car and seeing it on the road still. And because you cannot, with all the laws that are in place now, make a car that looks like that anymore. But we want to bring in the technology that exists today and put it into the car, so that and that's what we do with Spacebar a lot, is like having one foot in nostalgia and one foot in the future, and we try and bridge the gap as best we can. So, and then to your point, Amico Intellivision was just trying to release something. It ended up not going, but it looked pretty promising until they ran out of funding. So they are trying to do that. But I think you had. Thank you.
Yes. So you had mentioned that when you guys both came into the business 5 years ago or so, you kind of said, we're going to implement these changes to try to, take the business to the next level and more involved in the community. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what changes you felt you make, and like that could be like the events that you guys put on, or the physical games that you've brought in. Like, what do you think has really made your business?
Will can probably speak more to this than me, because he's been there since day one, and I was there day one, but I was a consumer. I wasn't in the trenches every day. But things like the previous owners they kind of didn't want any games kind of into the 90s, and that was a small thing that we changed, is we brought some games in from the 90s, the Mortal Kombats and the kind of some of the
Neo Geo,
the Jammer, Neo Geo, and the JAMA stuff. We brought in some of those things.
NBA Jam
and yeah, so that was kind of a thing that and some more modern pinball machines.
The previous owners were a little bit older than us, and their vision was the golden age of arcades, which was through 1989. They wanted to end it there and have nothing newer. But as you go on in time, again, back to the classic car thing, in 30 years, this car is now a classic. You can't say that a car from the 70s is now a classic because you think that only in the 50s or 40s or 30s or 20s, that was the golden age of automobiling. People look back and are nostalgic now for those things. So we are nostalgic because we are a few years younger than them. We're nostalgic for other games than they were, so we wanted to bring in those games. And a huge boost to it all was Zach bringing in his pinball machines, because previously the owners wanted pinball. They thought it was and were right in the decision to having pinball in the bar as an attraction, because it is probably our top earner, and the previous owner of the pinball machines was in there not paying for the right to be there and taking 100% of the profits. And so that since there was no real incentive for him to keep the games in tip-top shape, they weren't. And like a lot of the times, Zach would come and be like, "Man, 4 games out of 8? Or 2 games out of 8 aren't, that's all that's working? I mean, that's just money, that we could be making for the bar." So he came in, and he was the pinball guy. He brought in all the new pins, and he was bringing in like everything, all the hot stuff dialed in, which is something you can connect to. It's a Jersey Jack game. You can connect with your phone and play, like stand back and play with your phone, hit the flippers and everything. And we went up to Portland and bought a bunch of System 11 games and brought those down, and now he's like, restoring old Bally games in his home. I mean, complete.
To the dismay of my wife.
Complete dismantling of these games, and like and restoring them to near factory quality. And so I think that I think people respond to that. They like see how much passion and effort we're putting into the place, and so they want to come and be a part of it. And we welcome that. We want them to be. And back to Zach's point, like if people want to come and help us out and be part of the crew, we want them to come and help us. We want to go further with this thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, part of why we're here is a shameless call to action for other developers and people who want to, whatever you're passionate about, whether it be electronic art or Arduino or software or gaming or pinball or board games. If someone has an idea for a board game and they want to have it in Spacebar and they want to like put it out for the world to play, we would be happy about that. I mean, there's so many different nerd languages and so many different things and ways to do that. I'm wearing a D20 shirt. I'm a huge D&D nut, and if anybody wanted to create a different module for D&D or a different module for another game or their own independent game, we'd be more than happy to promote and to feature that and have it be on our shelves, and because it just raises all the boats, as far as like the community goes. And we have a friend of ours, Jaime, who's really big into tabletop gaming, and he wants to kind of like build the scene in Boise and help cultivate it. So if anybody wants to get involved with that, we have different avenues.
In more of an adult arena, I think.
For sure, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
because there is that gaming that exists for folks that are up to a certain age, and I think then once you a lot of people drop off.
Well, they come back.
But then they come back.
Yeah, they come back in different ways.
It's kind of like the arcade. They come back.
Absolutely. No, and I think that if we have like one weakness, I know people who have always been there. Ben, our D&D, or our DM, he's been there since day one. Him and Gary go way back, So that's our weakness, is that we are a 21 and up venue. So sometimes there's a desire for younger people to participate with what Spacebar does. Maybe in the future we can kind of reach out to that group and figure that out. But for now, the Spacebar is 21 and up. But that is a weakness. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that you kind of segued into that. So, but yeah.
Anything else? Lay it on us.
Thanks. Okay, so love the ideas. Again, as I said at the beginning, huge props for the fact that you guys have done this. The 80s kid in me is loving it. Coming down into Spacebar, though, the businessman in me says, okay, you want to do all this. What's the footprint going to look like? Can you give us some perspective on?
Oh, buddy.
Is there something you can lean in there to try and say, look, this is what we're looking to do. This is what we're looking to expand. Because maybe I'm like opening Pandora's box there.
No,
or giving too much away. But I'd love to learn what are you looking to do.
Do you want to let this guy know what's going on?
Well, in 1 week from tomorrow, we'll be closing our doors for 2 months. So we're going to go dark. We're going to go behind the moon, so no transmissions can be made. We are off to Kepler 22B. But we are moving the bar, but not far. 620 Idaho Street, which is one building east of us to the right. We will be inhabiting the basement of that building, and it's 4.5 times larger than what we have. So I think, though, to some dismay, we might not be as big as some folks like. We won't definitely be a Grinkers size. I don't know if you ever had been to Grinkers, but we kind of like, again, back to the business aspect of it, we kind of like not giving our entire, not showing all our cards at once, because then it gives the consumer a reason to come back and see us another time. So if we have games that aren't on the floor, we can always say, post it on Instagram, hey, look, we got this game now. And when you have a big space with everything in it, it's kind of a one-shot deal. So we want to keep people coming back and seeing what's new and what's been worked on and what we got going. But we are going to be 4.5 times bigger. We'll have some more pinball machines. We'll have some more arcade games on the floor. We will have a larger bar. We'll have a proper stage. We will still continue to have our console stations. Everything I think that everybody likes about Spacebar, but laid out correctly. It's just weird in the place we are now because the idea was right by the previous owners. They wanted to get this thing going, but that was a very low cost of entry in the place that we are now, and now it's a very high cost of continuing to be. And so we needed to listen to what our guests were saying, and that is we need a bigger space, we want more games, and we'd really like for you guys to add liquor. And that's another thing that we're trying to do right now is add liquor to our resume of things that we offer at the Spacebar. And we think it'll also open up another world of nerddom, like being able to delve deep into the chemistry of bartending and naming drinks and playing with dry ice and
Bantha milk.
And all those things. So that'll be fun. And then when the pandemic hit, we were hurt pretty bad. And I have a background in screen printing. And Zach, ingeniously said, hey, we need to pivot. We need to do something else to make us some money while we're down. Let's get back into screen printing. So we got a screen printing setup, put it in my garage, and we've been screen printing our own merchandise and other people's merchandise as well. And we will also have the screen printing shop in our new space, and that'll be for doing work during the day when the bar is not open, and then also for furthering the brand as a lifestyle brand, being able to like print T-shirts off, do First Thursday events, print posters. If a band comes in and they need merchandise because they're going up to Portland, we can knock it out for them that day. And so yeah, we're just trying to further the business but like continue to bring it all back together. So you're welcome.
Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Really, I just want to pitch you guys a whole bunch of ideas now.
All right, let's go. Here we go.
I'll ask you some questions first.
Yeah,
but,
no.
Okay.
Zach, it sounds like you do a lot of the like maintenance and tech work, and I was curious, like, are you the guy? Do you take care of all the machines? You have to get someone else in?
It's a joint effort. We have the guy who's the monitors are the Achilles heel. The monitors are kind of their own thing. The CRT monitors are kind of their own animal, and we have a guy, Torin, who's our behind-the-scenes tech, who nobody has ever met. He comes around sometimes, but he's got a day job. He does a lot of work on the monitors, and that's the tough work. He's got the setup. He's got the rig. He's got the test rig. He's got the rejuvenator. He's got all the stuff to make to do right by the monitors. The CRTs, so that's his real area of expertise. My area of expertise is pinball machines. That's kind of where I thrive because it's both mechanical and electrical, but there's no CRTs in them, which is really tough. And CRTs are dangerous and they will bite you.
But he's got a test rig at home now, and he's digging in. For sure.
I do a lot of board work too. I dabble in the Logic Pro, but a lot of it's just like it's a lot of through-hole stuff. There's no surface mount stuff. A lot of the older stuff's pretty easy. But then so I'm mainly like board work and pinball machines is kind of where I live, and then some of our other board work Torin will do because he's better about it than me, but he's really good at making monitors look good, and that's really important as well if you're trying to keep 40-year-old TVs alive. That's where a lot of the tech work gets done. It's between Torin and I.
Nice. Thank you. So I'll pitch you guys a game because it's never going to get made, and I want it to be out in the wild. I call it Mobile Bonfire Delivery Service.
Yes. It's
a top-down side-scroller where you have to keep a mobile bonfire lit in a dump truck to get it to the destination and avoid sprinklers and rain clouds and stuff.
I love it. Are you the developer?
No, I just
Oh.
want it to live. Like
Oh.
I don't have the time or the technical skills to develop it.
That's
but-
what you think. I'm teaching myself Python right now.
Don't
and
talk to Zach.
no.
He's gonna talk you into doing that.
told
man.
you,
I've been
I just
around
wanna
this
give you
guy. I
guys
know.
ideas
By the
now.
end of the
I
day,
know.
So, no, don't because like sometimes there's people who have the technical aptitude but they don't have the idea for the game, and then there's people who have the the technical aptitude in both. So it doesn't matter where you come from, and or maybe you make it into if you say, well, I can't code, but I can make it into a tabletop game where every time you roll a 6 you get to move 6 spaces, and then there's other elements that are happening. So don't think that just because you don't know how to code that you can make a game that would be
That's
fun for
great.
people.
I like thinking about it differently like that. Cool.
So maybe it's a tabletop game, or maybe it's a movie or a film or something that or something, anything,
But we'll help you if you
a
want.
card game,
Sweet.
We're gonna do it.
whatever.
Thank you.
For sure.
So I like it. I like the energy.
That's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, he's getting his
Yeah, he's got his watch on there.
So now, of course, I just forgot the question because I had a synapse failure. Crap. Sorry. Okay. Thinking about arcade games, I know that you do have some old table games, like Donkey Kong 2-player, it would flip back and forth. Are you planning on expanding that? This is actually 2 questions because I actually remembered the first question I was going to ask you. So do you plan on expanding that on out as well, so you can have more that those started in the bar. If you think about Pong back in the 70s and so forth. But the second question is more poignant to me. I work at Boise State. Do you have internships? Are you interested in internships? Because I'm thinking about our entire electrical and computer engineering student base. I mean, I can't think of a better way to give them some real opportunity to get down and dirty and to figure out a way to bridge this and help, strengthen that community involvement that you are deeply involved in, and also for us to be able to be a part of your success. So do you have any programs with Boise State right now? That's really the core of my question.
Will can talk to that because he's made better inroads than I.
Well, I don't know. I mean, with Aaron and Dean, they were computer science majors at Boise State, and they developed Devout Tournament, which Zach was talking about earlier, the Burdock Games deal. And Aaron was part of the development team and the club, the dev club there. And we were trying to get something started, and with all these things that we have, all these irons in the fire. It's hard to keep all the pots boiling and all the all the balls in the air.
Yeah,
so.
no,
but it is something that we really
want that so badly. That's what we want. We would love to have Boise State students making games and testing, using Spacebar Arcade as a test, like getting feedback, getting people to bring their, we have cabinets, we have empty cabinets. If they want to put it in a cabinet, they can do that. If they want to put it on the Switch, we can put it on the Switch. If they want to put it on a PC, we can put it on a PC. However they want to do that, we would love for that, because there's so much there's so much meat on that bone. And we were working with this Dean and the Burdock Games, and they were graduates of Boise State, and but the older they get and the further they're gonna get away from that, and they get away from the dev club, and they don't know as many people there. We're trying, and it's always a moving target, but what we need to do is get with the faculty or the dean or someone who's there in order to have a permanent fixture, so that when the kids move on, we still have somebody who can put the next kid in their place in the cabinet. So whether it's VR, or whether it's video games, whatever they want to, or if they want to start getting with the engineering and building hardware and things like that, or developing.
We want to help them build their portfolio and
Absolutely.
give them something to
real world
show
experience with
when they're out there in the real
client.
world. Yeah, for sure. And we want it to highlight be highlighted at Spacebar, and there's always been that one, and trying to make that connection with Boise State, because we know what you guys are doing over there. We're excited about what you guys are doing over there. We just, it's hard, especially because I think that the brass at Boise State is a bit corporate, and to be involved with a bar might ruffle some feathers. So that is kind of the caveat. That's kind of the caveat that we.
The gaming thing is where we come together.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a great fighting game community that comes in every other Tuesday, and they tried out the Devout tournament.
Devout tournament, they liked it.
They loved it. They got a huge response, and that pumped those guys up to want to continue to add levels to the game, and continue to develop because they were excited that there was a response. So.
I can't stop asking questions. Sorry,
Bring it
and
on.
I'm sorry to everybody else because I'm hogging the mic. Is there any thinking about
Thanks,
the
you guys.
arcade community? Is there any plan to interconnect? So if I think about like the trivia, like in bars, the trivia systems that are out there, is there any want or plan to like connect up with different regional arcades to say, look, let's do a tournament between Spacebar and some arcade in Portland or Seattle or wherever? Has that ever been talked about or looked at?
There's murmurs of that, and there's a little bit stronger community with pinball in that. As far as like arcade gaming, it's a little different. But now there's a company out there making high score save kits that are also Bluetooth enabled, so they can upload the scores to a central server. So what used to be done by hand is now digital and on demand, and it can be accurate and fair. So you're competing on, and that'll continue to develop as far as long as when development catches up with us. So one of the major pinball producers, Stern, just released its Stern Insider, where the games are now connected via Wi-Fi, and people have an RFID code on their phone, and they just log into the game, and then they will eventually. I talked to Stern, and I said, hey, is this can I run tournaments through this? And they said, not yet. Eventually, it will be to where people can run tournaments. They can run tournaments across the country, across the world. There's a big pinball community in Belgium and Australia and Germany and the UK and Spain and Italy. There's like a big European and some in South America too, pinball. So they will do that. It's got to catch up to it. There's not a huge demand for it. But as far as the arcade bars interacting with each other, we do interact with some other ones, but it's just slow going because we're an island out here in Boise, Idaho. We're so disconnected from everybody, and it's so tough because a lot of them are just trying to keep their arcade going. It's hard to see let's get together and plan in our next tournament. It's like, well, we're being flooded and we had to keep the beer flowing. So there's a lot of other things to consider.
I wanted to give everybody one more thing about that we do that we've done. So Zach has touched on the fact that music is pretty important to me, and one of the things that we did to set the stage at Spacebar was have an old school jukebox, a CD style jukebox. Well, it wasn't long until we hacked that thing and we put an iPod in there because 100 discs and having to change that all the time is difficult, but having the capability of having 10,000 songs on an iPod is appealing, especially to me. And then to have that be put onto a spreadsheet by our bar manager Julie that can be searched from your phone and you can find those songs. That was, okay, well, we can go even further down. There's another Easter egg. You can go further down the rabbit hole in Spacebar and go, I heard that song. It's on the jukebox, but I don't see it in there. How can I find it? Okay. Well, that's a very select few of people that want to be able to do that. So we're not hitting a very broad stroke with that. But touch tones jukeboxes are not something we want to be involved in because then you can't control the narrative of the sound in the space because it's whatever they have on their jukebox and whatever the person consuming has on their phone. So they can put on whatever they want in your space, and then you are, submitting to that as your space now. And I read this article. It's really interesting about the death of the dive bars because of those jukeboxes, because now they're all the same. It's just you know, and they play. We spoke to some people that are representatives of Touchtones, and they said that they play music just bad enough that they'll make you want to put money in to change it. And we never wanted that to happen at Spacebar. We want good music all the time, you know. So one of the things we thought was, let's build a boutique jukebox where we put our music in, the music we want people to play and search through and play. But you know, it's a coin op. It's something that can take money, and maybe it rivals a Touchtones. I mean, maybe there's bars out there, other dive bars like us, that want to have that in their space too. So that was something that we wanted to develop and kind of have, but not to much major success, because everything is going from being able to consume it and have it. Like when you download something from Spotify now, you don't have that. It's downloaded and you can play it, but you don't physically hold it, and you can't like put it onto a MP3 player. And so that's the problem we're having now, is that technology is moving so fast, and they're moving away from being able to hold and consume the actual article, that it's becoming something that's fleeting, and we're you know, I feel like I'm chasing it now.
Yeah, it was interesting that we, with this thing, because our jukebox that we had, that was the CD iPod one, was starting to die, and the module, the board that allowed the iPod to interact with the interface of the control panel was getting old, and then the iPod itself was getting old, even though it was a solid state drive. It was just like they weren't updating firmware for it, so it was like becoming harder and harder to use that specific iPod that is ancient, like, you know, it's like 7 years old. It's not really that old, but that's old in technology terms. So we had to kind of evolve it, and we looked at the Touchtunes thing, and that it was just like garbage. It was just corporate BS that they're just trying to like shove down people's throats. So we just like, well,
Corner the market though.
right?
So
Yeah, there's no other jukeboxes out there now. You search jukeboxes, and you can buy something for your home, and you can put CDs or whatever, your own MP3. It's lame. There's no coin operated jukeboxes that go in bars other than like the
AMI and
the
Touchtones.
Touchtones, and it's the same. They're the same thing, and they're just basically trying to force feed you what music they want. But we don't want that. We want our music in our bar. But then we had a break between, we didn't have jukebox, and then we learned so much from doing this. It was crazy. And so we didn't have a jukebox for a while because it broke, and then we had our bartenders playing music exclusively, and that created a certain vibe, and everybody liked that. We liked the way it was curated, because we curate everything down to the nth degree in Spacebar, whether it's the music or the lighting or every little detail. That's the you know, devil's in the details. We really thrive on that. So letting somebody else like take control back over of the music was, even if it was our playlist, it was still kind of like,
The bartenders
it was
didn't want
hard.
to give it up.
They didn't want to give up control of that, so it's kind of difficult to like reintroduce the jukebox, even though we fully curate it and has all of our favorite music in it. But it just, maybe someone will play the wrong thing at the wrong time and kill the vibe in the bar. I'm sure you've all been in a bar and they played the wrong song, and you're just like, oh my God, I want to leave so bad right now. But I'm having a good time, but I want to leave because the music sucks. And I got to pay $20 to get in line next on the thing. No, I'm not going to do that. Let's just go. You know, but so we're getting this like conundrum. So we're navigating those waters where we have like an independently developed jukebox that we can put anything we want on there, but we're struggling to get music for it because no one makes CDs anymore. If it's all Spotify and Apple Music. So if you want to actually get a physical music that you own, that you don't, it's not physical, but it's just the music that you own the rights to. That doesn't exist anymore. So it's just like an exercise in that, like it's evolving, the music industry and coin op and music industry and all these things. So we're navigating those waters on how we want to proceed, but it's fun.
Yeah. So, anything else? Anybody?
I see Sean back there. I think we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Sean,
Sean, Sean looked at his watch. I think we got to go.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was someone like right behind us that we need to be courteous of. Okay.
I got one question.
Yeah,
Yes.
bring it on.
Are the rumors true that you guys are flying in Billy Mitchell for the grand reopening?
This is true. This is true. No.
I wish. I would rather
We
fly
couldn't
in-
afford that guy.
No, well, the free hot sauce, you know. I'd rather fly in like Scott Denisi or someone like that, you know, or Zach Sharp, but that's the pinball guy in me. Anybody else have any questions that don't,
Sean?
Sean, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
He's got one here.
Ah, Evan's got one. That's good.
Saved, Sean. You were saved.
I did have a plug. If you guys missed Corset Lore, she did her talk on just kind of like Game Boys and using those for music.
Yes.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she is performing tonight at Spacebar at 11:40, I believe. Or that's when
We're
she said
excited to
that.
have her, yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely go check that out. I'm going to be there. It'll be
Cool. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and buy beer and stuff.
We'll buy you a beer. Everybody in this room.
I got tokens for everybody in this room if they want to come down and play games. So I got tokens for people.
Did you bring
Hell yeah.
tokens?
I brought tokens.
I brought one. A coin
I brought a
flip.
bag of tokens and coin flips too.
Yeah, good.
Go.
Oh yeah, just to follow up on or carry on with that, the pinball thing and like the idea of being able to take the scores out and put them somewhere else. I've been kind of playing around with the idea. Is there anything in the industry for like the old CRT games or the old like cabinets? I had this idea to somehow intercept that video signal with machine learning and visual machine AI and find some way to put that in a database. Is there anybody in the industry doing that right now?
There is somebody who has a AI that they've taught to play games, and it's super weird how it does. I don't know if they're what it was like a thesis for somebody, but they were teaching their software to play Mario Brothers. But it's weird to watch the visualization. Like they would just say, "Hey, okay, software, play Mario," and it took a long time for it to learn. But it was funny how it would just like jump like continuously, like just like so slow, and like it was like feeling it out, like it was blind.
Yeah.
It was just feeling out the level. It would jump on everything and touch everything, and then it would figure out what. Okay, I can go this far, and then I die. And so it just like mapped the entire. And you watch YouTube videos on it. It just maps the entire level. And it's like, what is it doing? But it's like mapping, and every time it learns something new, like, okay, don't go there. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is painful. But when they're running it in the computer, it could just do it at light speed, and it could just do it quickly. But when you're watching it in real time, you're like, oh my gosh.
We've got a regular Eugene who can do that. Who's mapped
Oh,
it.
I know, yeah. He's going for the world record on Mario Brothers, the speed world record, and he was almost there on the console, and then he's almost there on the arcade software, which is different than that. So,
Anyone else?
anyone else?
Any other takers?
Come on.
Come on.
Don't be shy.
We want to talk.
I will say that if you get a chance to play some of the games that Zach and Will talked about today, they're really fun, and they're like, again, it's so cool to have the idea around building a community and a place here in Boise where if you have an idea, like, let's try it out, and I'm real excited about that. And we'll probably keep working on that with Hackport and
Cool.
have some workshops. We'll keep
Thanks.
the brain trust going on
Let's
this
do it,
thing.
man. Let's do it. Thanks, Sean.
Anyone
Thanks,
else?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Go get some tokens, and I better see you
Yeah, I
guys
got-
tonight.